Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. And thank you, Catherine, for starting the event in a beautiful way. Except, I can't quote a Greek philosopher. I'm not quite that heavy. The philosophers, the philosopher that I could quote, this sort of sets the same tone for what we're talking about, is an old mentor of mine, Lee Iacocca, who said, lead, follow, or get the hell out of the way. Our subject and the discussion we're going to have is just that. And that's preparing our competition, preparing ourselves to meet the competition, the challenges that you've talked about. What do we need to do, and how do we face them? Well, first of all, how do we assume what they are? And then what do we do strategically to contend with them? We've got a great panel, and it's one that I think has the ability to see every element of our business at a time that we're thinking of meeting some significant challenges. And I'm really excited about it. First of all, two new participants and a veteran. Gabe Slack is with us. He's the sales enablement manager for General Motors vehicles. And he works with the fleets, the suppliers, the sales teams, maintains the Salesforce processes. He knows what's going on in the real world. He's the connection between the customers and the sales activities. And so he's connecting everybody in the ecosystem of General Motors with fleet programs and commercial activity. And when we talk about our different companies and their ability to sustain change, which is what we're going through right now, it's important to see change as companies have navigated over time these kinds of times, these kinds of challenges. General Motors was founded in 1908. So they've gone through a number of changes and they've met the needs. And as a manufacturer and OE, it's an important part of what we're talking about in terms of our products. Joe Barron is the regional engineering manager for Holman. He's an expert in specifying upfits and configuring commercial vehicles. He's got a vast experience he's been with BrightDrop. He's been with a number of other companies in the commercial business, especially the medium-duty trucks. And he knows well the vehicles and how the vehicles fit and work with the different customers' needs. Now, Holman, by the way, is a company that was founded in 1924 as a dealership in New Jersey. So look at all the changes that they've gone through and sustained over the years. And then our veteran Kirk Mann, who knows everything about the industry. His specialty is financing. He's the EVP head of transportation for Mitsubishi HC Capital, a leading independent financing provider. And I have to say, Kirk, your company wins the award for being able to stick around the longest. It goes back to the 1870 is when your company started. But everybody's over 100 years old. So we've all been here before, and we want to learn from the companies. Well, I'd like to start our conversation. This is how do we overcome the challenges? But first, we have to understand them. And it's important to understand right now where we are in your minds for each of our panelists. What is the industry outlook from your perspective? How does the rest of 25 look in 26? Talking about forecasting demand and supply in Catherine's segment, and it's true, the industry forecast is about 1.9 million, which is down a little bit from last year. The heavy duty and medium duty vehicles are down about 6 or 7%. So from your perspective, how do you evaluate the industry outlook right now? What's happening in the marketplace, and what's happening with your customers? Gabe, maybe we could start with you, the GM view of the industry outlook.
Yeah, sure. Hey, first of all, thanks so much for the great intro, Jim, and for moderating this awesome group. And thanks to Catherine and the team for including me today. This is awesome to be in front of everybody. And thanks for your time and attention for everyone that's here. I think as we came through COVID, we taught customers a certain way of ordering, right? Everything was on allocation, and you kind of had to hedge your bets, and you had to go, hey, let me get 10 here and let me get 10 here, and maybe I only get 5 here and 5 here. And so I think it's kind of a little bit of, we're off allocation. Doesn't seem like any of the OEMs are on that, maybe with some specific products right now. But, you're back to open ordering. But I think the ordering cycle's kind of been pushed back a little bit. And that's just due to different model years for different vehicles. Again, that allocation. And I think just some uncertainty in the market. I know we'll get into tariff and some other obstacles that we've got here too. But the ordering seems like it's coming around. We used to have more of a spring, early summer ordering cycle. It just seems like it's been pushed back. And again, I think that's just due to a lot of different factors. But at GM, we're excuse me, we're pretty steady right now. We're up year over year, gaining a little bit of market share, which is great, and the market's pretty well, as you mentioned, flat. But open ordering has helped. I think it's just a communication thing of the fact that you don't have to hedge your bets anymore. If you're ready to order product, we're able to take those orders and we're able to produce them in pretty good timing. The logistics have sorted out, production is sorted out. We're a little bit back to I hate to use the term normal, but a little bit back to normal here. So, like I said, gaining market share here at GM. Customers, I think, just a little bit apprehensive still. So that's why we've kind of introduced some stuff to add some stability to the market in terms of, excuse me, price protection and price assurance and price protection at time of ordering. And so I think that's been good. I think that's what the marketplace needs is just a little stability and not worried about what is the tariff impact? I think when you look at, year over year for model year for us, we were in that typical 1% to 3% range. Incentives have gotten a little bit stronger. Again, just trying to add some stability in the market for everybody out there. And as you look at, how we go to market, we've got multiple plants in multiple areas. And so we're able to move some of that production around, mitigate some of the tariff stuff. And again, just provide some stability in the marketplace for customers.
Have you seen it from a standpoint of the customer demand, any changes in the specs of the vehicles? Are they spending more, spending less? Are they looking at the vehicle itself in a different manner?
No, I can't say anything too specific there. No, I think that, I think we're, and Joe can speak to this, I'm sure you're seeing customers that are holding vehicles a little bit longer than their original cycle would have been. If it was a 4-year cycle, maybe they're looking at 5 and maybe repurposing that vehicle. Just because the uncertainty in the marketplace, I think is causing the cycles to go a little bit longer.
Yeah. Joe, how about from your perspective, the outlook for the industry from Holman's eyes?
Yeah, no, and thanks for the intro, Jim, and kind of to dovetail a lot to what Gabe had brought up. We've been seeing a lot of different changes. I mean, really, honestly, since 2020, really when the global impact from COVID and a lot of different shifts throughout the industry. We've done everything we can to help navigate with the clients to kind of right size their fleet as much as possible. I mean, there were a lot of disruptions in the supply chain due to geopolitical issues, but also from supply chain, just the overall supply chain and OEM production, no specific OEM, it really impacted everybody from chip shortages to just even dash clusters on Peterbilts being backlogged for so long. We've really seen kind of a shift here, and I think everybody kind of has, and we'll save a bit more for the tariff discussion in a little bit. But from an emissions standpoint, the retraction of ACT and ACF, for example, and allowing some of the OEMs to possibly scale back a little bit on their emissions mandates. Has really opened up some other interest from other clients that have higher and more complex vehicles, kind of more very unique design, very long lead times. They've had them running for several years, even to your point, it should have been replaced cycle, let's say 5 to 7 years for a certain type of medium heavy duty piece of, an asset for that. To now it's starting to look at, hey, this might be opening up a little bit more. With I would say more of like a freight recession right now. It's had an impact on the over the road demand, and reduced reduction in the demand for heavy duty day cab and sleeper cab tractors, for example, where that kind of market has really been impacted by really the operational costs versus the freight rate, where it's really impacted a lot of logistics companies that are going through this right now. That will continue to happen, and so we're looking to help clients scale through that, especially in the medium heavy duty market. But from other OEMs that are kind of changing direction, Zuzu recently, it's been in the news, broke ground in South Carolina with their new plant that they're going to be opening, that will be helping to on the cab over N series, both gas, EV, and also the F series cab over, which will also be the LCF too, if I'm correct, Gabe, for the GM cab over low cab Ford chassis. Really, that's pretty much just a segment of what we've seen, and where it's headed here. One other point too is that operationally, without again getting into the tariffs, there's a lot of people that have been on the fence post on, should I order now, should I buy now? We're still seeing an influx more in certain areas, depending on the business model, of stock versus factory. This has always been an ongoing discussion, but we do still see an uptick of that. And it's not really we can't really point to fleets not being more proactive and having to be reactive in certain scenarios. It's really more business dependent. But again, to what Gabe said too, I think some clients are still kind of wanting to see a little bit more stability in the market overall before they want to go and purchase. But we have definitely seen an influx. I hope that helps answer your question.
It's a great answer. Thank you for that. And what is your forecast on units? Do you have
yeah, I'd have to, overall, I'd have to do a little research on that.
But at Holman, your Holman forecast, are you looking for increases in Holman volume this year?
Oh, yes, we are. Yes, we are. I mean, we're definitely seeing an uptick in depending on what type of vocational areas the clients are in, but we have seen growth, definitely in interesting growth. We're trying to get more on the factory ordering and get clients to be a little bit more proactive instead of reactive and trying to go out of stock for everything. But again, too, that comes down to the application requirements and the business needs. Opening up a whole new business segment, for example, or getting a certain contract merits where they need to have a vehicle within 2 or 3 months versus traditional factory ordering, depending on what type of application that asset is, could take 6 to 10 months, depending on the level of complexity of the vehicle. But we are forecasting to see more growth overall in a little bit more healthier economy. So
I think you're right. It's interesting that while we're talking about it, not a growth in the industry or some contraction in a couple of segments, all that means is that the weaker competitors are going to fall behind. They're going to lose share. The strong companies that have a good strategy will grow regardless of the environment, out of their own activities and leadership. So I think that's one message for our audience, and that is that don't be misled by what's going on with the industry. Don't read that as your own company's weakness. Look at that as a challenge to gain share, and then when the market comes back and you've got more share, well, you grow even more. Kirk, how about from the finance standpoint? From my perspective, the fact of the matter is, GM makes the vehicles, and of course, Holman sells them, but that's not really true. Financing sells everything. So boss, how does it look from your perspective?
I think Joe and Gabe have covered it very well. I think where we're at today is there's a measure of uncertainty, and that ties back to the tariffs. What's going to happen with inflation. Freight has been weak. It's been the longest down cycle of freight that I've seen in my 30-year career. And there is an inventory overhang right now. You've got a lot of stock inventory out there with dealers. It just depends on who you're talking to. But the guys that stock equipment, they have a pretty good sized yard right now. They got a lot of equipment on the yard. And some of that goes back to, and this is just an anecdotal thing, but I was talking to a dealer not long ago, and he said, my customers before the election were saying, well, I'm waiting on the election. And then after, Trump announced the tariffs, they said, we're waiting on the tariffs. And today it's just, we're still waiting a little bit. It doesn't happen everywhere. And there are dealers across the country that are finding those niches, Jim, that change their landscape in terms of what they are experiencing at their dealership. And what you really have to focus on, and I always drive to solution, but you really have to focus on outcome selling. I mean, we have to be able to convince the operators of this equipment that the outcome will either be the same or better. And in most cases, if you're replacing your existing fleet with new equipment, you're going to come out better because of the efficiencies. And Joe and I were visiting earlier, and I think Joe said that maintenance costs on some of this older equipment is about 8.5% a year. And if the tariffs end up washing out at around 9% of an increase, buy a new piece of equipment and have the certainty of that equipment operating correctly when you need it to operate correctly. But long term, Jim, I think it was S&P Global that said we're at about a $10.1 trillion global market for trucks, and it's going to grow at about a rate of 6% per year until 2035. So you're looking at $18.1 trillion. So anybody who looks at the current environment and says, it's just awful, needs to understand what's happening long term.
Yeah.
And really the focus ought to be on repositioning your business in a way that makes it possible for you to do very well in a very short time. I think Ken Veith, I had dinner with Ken Veith last night, and I didn't talk to him about this, but he was quoted recently as saying the economy right now is like a slingshot, pull back really hard. And so there's going to be a moment when this thing inflects. And if you've done a good job of managing your strategy, you're going to be better off. And I'm not going to quote a philosopher or even Lee Iacocca, Jim, but I will say, and people say this all the time, they say, hope is not a strategy.
That's right. Yeah.
And I believe that. I believe that, but it is hope that is foundational to everything we do. If we didn't believe that the economy was like a slingshot pull back really hard, then why in the world would we even bother? But hope is the thing I think that will drive us to better strategy and repositioning ourselves over time.
You're right. That's well put. Gabe, we've kind of talked a little bit about the outlook, and tariff impact is a bit of the elephant in the room sometime on pricing. From a GM point of view, what is your strategy on the tariffs? And how do you think the impact is really going to be on the market this year and our customers?
Yeah, I kind of touched on that in the first question, so I'll elaborate a little bit on it there, Jim. The pricing we tried to keep consistent. We had a little bit more incentive money on there to add into that stability. I think when you look at the manufacturing footprint that we have, we've got some flexibility there. Blazer was something that maybe was not going to be continued, but now we're able to continue that and keep that in the U.S. and have that as a U.S. product that's not subject to all the tariffs. So there's stuff that we can move around a little bit. I don't think it's any secret when we release our financial stuff quarterly that the profits are not as high as they were, and some of that is just due to the tariff. But at this point, we're trying not to pass that down to the consumer, and we're trying to mitigate a lot of that. And unfortunately, eat a little bit and eats into our profits. But I think, that's, again, part of our strategy, just to keep that stability in the marketplace. Customers have been on a wild ride the last 5 years. And I think the more that we can do to level set them and again, provide some comfortability, I think that's important. So that's kind of our strategy here. There's also government regulations that come into this too, right?
Yeah.
You've got CARB and you've got, EPA, and they're battling, and what state's doing this and what state's doing that. And so, as an OEM, we're trying to keep, a foot in both camps, understanding that, the CARB folks have their thing. And I know some of that's maybe going to be repealed. I think that's still some court battles to be fought there. But I think it's important still that we're kind of have a foot in both camps in that regard, and not just saying, hey, EPA saying this, now we're scrapping all of this too. And I know GM has not really been in the hybrid game. Mary Barr's made some announcements there about what we're going to do in that space, and nothing has been officially announced. So we'll see how that comes to fruition. But I think it's, what's important here is we're meeting customers where they need to be met. Right. And we're seeing, EV adoption in some instances, it makes a lot of sense. And so, that's driving the stuff there, and that's good. And that'll help us get to scale a little bit better too. But, EV, we talked about this a little bit before. EV demand, we think, is going to drop a little bit now that the government subsidy is gone away. But again, I saw that more on the retail side than I did on the fleet in terms of people that were taking advantage of that. And we still have the Equinox EV, which is, very competitively priced in that space. And so that's good. So I guess, multiple emissions paths, just trying to meet the customer where they are, keep the pricing consistent. Just again, I guess I'll say it again, probably said it 15 times, but just stability in the marketplace and working the relationships with our customers to make sure we understand their needs and their pain points, and we're trying to meet them in the middle of it.
And affordability is part of the issue that customers face in terms of the costs. And I think your Bright Drop is a EV line, but it still is affordable. It works well for a commercial product, for a business use.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot more better adoption there now. When we originally launched that product, it was kind of a direct to consumer, and there's a very limited dealer base. And quite frankly, I think that was kind of the backward approach. We've got a very robust dealer network, and getting the product out there that we've done now, making it a Chevrolet, has really got it a lot more eyes on it, and a lot more ability to see what that vehicle is capable of in the marketplace besides the last mile delivery.
Thank you for the pat on the back for dealers, because that's been my passion for 70 years. Joe, how about from your standpoint, looking at it from the customer's eyes, the tariffs and, as Gabe said, the regulations, both of them kind of work together. One offsets the other perhaps a little bit, but how is that going to impact our customer base?
Yeah, no, it's a good point, Jim, and a great feedback on that too, Gabe. But a couple points that we've seen too, and also from the manufacturing and distribution side, from Holman's side of it. We've obviously, we're trying to. We do have some imports, components and raw materials that we have to do from our manufacturing perspective, and we mitigate the tariff exposure actually by patronizing certain suppliers that we've worked with over the years that have now pivoted more to US base than it was from foreign locations. And we constantly have been looking at and monitoring suppliers from our vertically integrated supply chain source. So we've really ramped that up so that we're trying to really keep the price fluctuations down as much as possible. It was kind of the whole tariff launch when this started a couple months ago. It was kind of big to everybody, and as that ripple effect, it's just like you drop a drop of water into a stagnant pool. You're going to have a ripple effect, and it all goes downhill. So as the tariff started to impact some of the suppliers from raw materials or parts and components would just start to invoice with, with the tariff, just put it on, no notice, and here it is. We had to take in Holman and from manufacturing and distribution side of it to our clients, and a lot of other companies in the entire industry, from the OEMs, from upfitters, from medium heavy duty truck, OEMs too as well, absorb some of this. But you absorb it to a certain point or pivot and find new suppliers, and other sources and other resources or contacts that you haven't used in a couple of years that now are manufacturing and really have stepped to the game to help offset those tariffs. So we've seen that as kind of a step forward, if you will, to really be able to overcome the impacts of the tariffs. Recently, just this morning, the 25% tariff that's imposed now from the administration has now been pushed back to November 1st.
Yeah.
Kind of giving you that, it's the soft punch, if you will, of, hey, this is coming. We're going to push it back a little bit more. Now you got another 3 weeks to kind of scale for that. So we're kind of watching that too as well. How is that going to impact orders that we're trying to help our customers forecast for? Is there another vehicle chassis model that we can look at? So there's a lot of things, again, too, since really 2020, that hasn't really calmed down. It kind of keeps you on your toes. So that's really what we've been kind of experiencing from the eyes, pardon me, from really the eyes of the consumer, of how many different variables you got to keep looking at, and then what's the road next in the next 6 months, 12 months down the road.
Is it creating pent up demand?
Oh, yes, it is, especially in higher valued assets. Your crane trucks, bucket trucks, unique pieces of equipment, or clients that already had pushed off their life cycle a little bit further. Instead of that 4 or 5 years, now they're pushing it to 7. We've been seeing them kind of like, okay, is it right around the corner? No matter what, the vehicle prices are going to be going up a bit. However, that's offset by incentives or things like that. Trucks, or let's just say trucks that are built now and let's say 2025, or vehicles that are ordered and you're getting now delivered in 25, there will be some kind of an impact, potential increase. What that is depends on obviously the type of vehicle, asset, vehicle model in 2026.
Right.
So that's something you have to take into account now. It's the kind of, you don't want to do the hurry up and wait. So that's something that's been interesting on it. Another thing, how that incorporates too with the emission side of it, I'd like to also bring up on the powertrain mix, I would say. EV is there is a slight decline a bit on the EV, especially with tax credits and the impact from that. But over recently, in the last couple months, I had a lot of interest, I would say, in the LPG and CNG markets. CNG has been, kind of dwindled out there for a little while. But there are several customers that come back interested to see, like, hey, where is that at now? Or they moved or bought a location or a business, moved operations that now has infrastructure there already. And how can I utilize this and get into alternate fuels?
It's interesting that Gabe mentioned on that in our conversation before we went on the air, that the retail customers had a lot of incentives on EVs, but maybe not so much for commercial. And if you think about the accelerated depreciation that's in the big beautiful bill, it's maybe more affordable to absorb that, and that's part of the regulation side and the tariff. So let me just move on real quickly to Kirk on the tariff and regulation perspective. Financing. How do you see the impact, and what are you doing to mitigate?
Well, we're certainly focused on, and I think I mentioned this in another conversation, that we really saw a pretty big asset bubble in 21, 22. Supply was short on equipment, and prices went up fairly quickly. And we continued to lend into that environment. But when things slowed down dramatically, we had equipment coming back, and it was coming back at prices that were higher than they'd ever been. One dealer of ours had purchased a rather large batch of, I think, 4-year-old Freightliner Cascadia trucks. And we knew that the value of those trucks was wholesale was about $45,000 back at that time. And but they were being bought at $120,000. So, that's a pretty dramatic price bubble. And we certainly felt the impact of that. And I can tell you that, we have built models. We're making sure that if we believe there's another asset bubble coming, then the way you mitigate it is by providing loans for organizations and individuals who have tremendous capacity. And when I talk about capacity, what I mean is they have the ability to repay the loan, even if things get difficult. And so that's one way from a risk perspective. On the asset itself, I mean, we can do down payments. Nobody likes down payments. So we have to be just, I would say, more cautious in terms of the quality of credit. And I don't think that's going to go away in terms of the liquidity that is in the marketplace. I don't care who the lender is. Obviously, GM Financial is going to do everything they can to push product out the door, and that's how captives operate. That's how they should operate. But when you talk about independents and regional banks and national banks who are not a part of that process, we're just funding for equipment purchases. We have to be maybe a little cautious in terms of the folks that we're lending money to. And we've done that. We've definitely done that. What's interesting is our volume production has remained level. And you wouldn't think that would be the case. But really, I think over the last couple of years, liquidity has kind of evaporated from the market, and we're still here. We're still lending money. And the same thing happened really in 2008 when Lehman filed for bankruptcy protection. In 2009, I was at GE Capital. I was the CMO at Transportation Finance there. The CEO of GE Capital said, "Hey, ladies and gentlemen, tell your salespeople don't answer the phone. We don't know what our cost of funds is." And it's because everything was going haywire. And it didn't last very long, but it did happen for just a moment. But meanwhile, I looked over at what I eventually joined, Hitachi Capital, and they were writing checks left and right. So there was some stable liquidity there.
Yeah, that's Japan.
If you're a fleet, if you're a dealer, if you're an OEM, you want to be sure that you're partnered with people that have stable liquidity and can stay in the game with you for the long term. And that doesn't mean that we won't be cautious, but we're here. We're here.
On the one of the offsets, the retail side, speaking of down payments are running the lowest they have since 2020 as a percentage, and they're financing 7.5 years now.
Yeah. Terms are longer.
Terms are longer. Are you seeing the same thing on a commercial side?
We are. We go longer today than we probably were going 10 years ago. But you have to balance that strategic decision to help people kind of cash flow their equipment with risk. And so, again, you're going back to, you want to do this with people that have a good capacity and the ability to repay the loan.
So that's an
answer.
That extends the life cycle use of the equipment, which then transfers a lot of the opportunity from selling new to service and mobility.
Yeah.
And that's a part of our conversation that I think we should have a whole session on. Gabe, from your standpoint at General Motors, uh, especially if you look at the medium duty trucks, which is a big part of your business, what changes are you making or do you see to sustain or take advantage of the opportunities that are there versus the challenge of a declining market? Is service part of that?
Oh, definitely, definitely. I think quality, right, is the biggest thing, right? Because
You're
if
right.
if they're keeping these vehicles
Yep.
longer, right, then they need that quality to help keep
Yep.
the service costs down at the end of the day, and hopefully keep the strong residual value.
Mhm. Absolutely right. So, do you have in your portfolio of products the GM's product really has focused much more on trucks lately than cars as a organization? There aren't many cars, or there's SUVs and crossovers, but truck is really growing as a percentage of the total GM sales share. Do you?
Yeah, as I was fortunate enough to be a part of the kind of the re-entry of General Motors into the medium duty space, 8 years ago, and that started with the low cab forward, which was a partnership with the Zuzu, and they've been a great partner for us. And then we were partnered in the past, and then bankruptcy came, and that kind of dissolved, and then we got back together again, and then we launched the conventional cab medium duty truck, your 45, 55, 6500. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that you had adjacent sales that you were losing, because you had customers that would buy a Ford or a Ram product on the light duty or the HD side, and they liked the fact that they could have medium duty there too. And so with us, you had light duty, heavy duty, but then we kind of had that gap there. And so I think that that's helped us. It's helped us in the vocational space too. We had some big customers in the rollback wrecker space and other industries too, where we just didn't have that visibility before. And then that's going to help us on the light duty and the HD side too. Obviously, the Express Savannah van has been in the market a long time, a tried and true product.
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Passenger van, a cutaway van there too, and many years ago, we kind of moved some of that production so that we could get more cargo vans and more cutaways out there. So, overall, GM obviously very committed to the commercial market, and so happy that we're able to be, from your smaller Trailblazers and Traxes, and like you mentioned, those smaller SUVs and crossovers and Equinox, and then all the way up the line to our full size SUVs, but then also having that. All that commercial product and under 10,000 pounds, over 10,000 pounds as a cutaway, not as a cutaway. Then obviously introducing the Bright Drop van so that we've got an EV product in that commercial space. And we touched on how that's doing in the marketplace and gaining attention and really acceptability in terms of what it can do and what it is. And so it's a good time to be in the commercial market here at GM with the breadth of products that we have and the support that we have.
The Savannah van is a great example of the longevity. It's one of the few vehicles I think you sell that you can buy a used one and get a historical license plate.
I think you're right about that. And obviously, a lot of competition's gone to the higher roof van, so we've got just a different alternative there, which is nice. And some customers still like that. And functionality, it's got its downfalls, but then it's also got its plus sides just because it's different too.
And the regulations have had a share of problems for it. Joe, how about from your perspective? Again, looking at it from the customers. The medium duties, the 10,000 GVWs, the heavy duties. How do you see that trend occurring? And then what do you do about it? Because customers are running these things longer and longer.
Yeah, I mean, it's really just making sure that they're trying to keep them back in track to doing the optimal life cycle, the replacement. But some of the right sizing strategies that we've been doing kind of range from either downsizing and it kind of to dovetail off of what Gabe was just saying on some of the vehicles that possibly, they've moved up to like a higher roof type van. On the other side of that spectrum, we've seen people moving from, let's say, your traditional step vans, for example, which used to be extremely commonplace. Now with the influx, and even the GM and GMC Express Savannah van is still, in my opinion, doing pretty healthy. Out in the marketplace comparatively, depending on the van size and application. But we're seeing, and this has been a kind of a trend over the last few years, but we're starting to see, I can't say there's an uptick, but it's still maintaining it. Where, some folks, they're interested in, hey, they're from the step van market moving to like, hey, can I get away with, it comes back around, do you have, similar type of vans out there that could meet that same type of need? Whether it be EV, whether, what kind of, it obviously depends on the application. I'm not trying to pick on one OEM or the other, but it just, we're seeing that type of downsize in some certain areas, going from your larger assets down to the smaller assets. Obviously that lowers the total capitalized cost of the vehicle. We have to come back and find, potential lightweight upfit solutions, using, aluminum or composite materials over, traditional steel for everything. And that could be also on service body applications for your, box delete or cab chassis. And moving through that, other strategies too, offloading, or one thing that's been extremely popular and working through when you're doing a life cycle analysis with a client, really redistributing underutilized assets. Sometimes it's, can you get a hold of the branch, or there's a new branch location or a new branch manager or a new vehicle delivers, and in some pictures or something, you see like 2 or 3 box trucks sitting in their back lot, and it's like, hey, whose are those? Oh, those are ours. Yeah, they've been just sitting here for a while, and either they've just fallen off like the client's radar, we weren't even made aware of something that they had owned, or it was a buyout. It's a new client to us that we weren't even aware of. So really working with the client to really understand, if they're looking to, inject capital basically back into their business. We look at strategies from, sale and leaseback, for example, fleet size reduction, or extending the life cycle by really looking at what kind of assets they have and what aren't they using. Can we move assets, not trying to talk anybody out of not ordering new vehicles, but if you get a new branch location or a new contract that goes through, hey, can we reutilize certain assets to move over here? That goes into the speccing piece of it too, of standardized, and there's not really one size fits all, but trying to standardize a customer's, their specs from the chassis and outfitting, for example. Instead of having, let's say, if you're going to do a run of 200 vehicles, for example, the cost consistency, the outfit consistency, and shortening the order delivery lead time while taking advantage of leveraging volume pricing. If you're buying, 1 or 5 components, let's say for a certain upfit project at 200 vehicles, or if, you can make 3 different packages out of those 200 vehicles. Not only can they move through the line faster, you have consistent cap cost and everything across the board. So there's a whole range of it, for a long answer to your question.
That's great. Good answer. And it kind of brings one up for Kirk, and that is the financing shared assets. It does make sense. When you go by a lot of these fleets, there are parked vehicles, and the assets are depreciating. Do you see any trend in financing where there are subscriptions or shared assets or other methods of trying to absorb these high costs?
Yeah, we do, Jim. We see companies out there that have technological platforms that enable that. What we're seeing a lot of right now in the mobility space is people who are saying, look, we understand you don't have a 100% EV fleet, and we understand the complexities associated with managing the EV unit versus an ICE unit. And so we want to help you acquire the EV equipment that you want, and we'll just service it. That's one thing, equipment as a service. And then we're also seeing much broader opportunities with platform as a service organizations that are literally coming into a yard and managing the distribution of trailers, whatnot around that yard using equipment that is autonomous. And so, and those are kind of popping up all over the country. And so I do believe that this concept of shared assets is a good one. It is not easy to manage. And utilization is a real key for anyone that's operating in that environment to know that they're going to have, 80, 85, 90% utilization. And so I do believe that with fleets who have equipment that is sitting on the side, if you can plug that equipment into a shared situation, it can be very good. I will tell you the challenges with it are on service of those trucks. That's what has been noted by some of the organizations doing this. So look, it's a great model.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of things that we can do to sort of streamline things nationally. But there are also some challenges associated with it. Now, Joe can tell you, I mean, when people need to short-term rent something, it's absolutely possible. But you have to have an organization that is doing both. They really need to be doing long-term and short-term.
So that's interesting. Gabe, from General Motors' perspective, are you looking at any models of ownership of shared assets or mobility?
Not currently, no. I think if you recall, we did have a Maven division where we kind of had vehicle share, and unfortunately that did not continue. But so no, nothing to announce on my side there. I would give Joe a shout out though. He's on the upfit in the spec side, and he just did a beautiful job of talking up the fleet management side of Holman to repurposing of assets. So kudos to you, Joe. Hey, what a company guy. Good job.
Shameless plug.
It wasn't shameless. It was true. But he did bring something else up, Gabe, that's of interest. As affordability is an issue we contend with, and it's important to save money perhaps by having fewer options or iterations. And so there's a movement amongst the manufacturers to not have as many options available to customers, but at the same time, our society is becoming one. We want everything custom, and Joe kind of brought that up. Is at GM, do you feel a movement towards either more customization or more standardization?
You know what? I would say standardization, and I think all the OEMs are always trying to do that, right? Especially when you're getting squeezed on costs and you've got this tariff stuff coming in. But I think when you look at it on the flip side of standardization too, when you look at, so say for instance, safety features, and I'll use the Bright Drop again. That thing is just loaded with safety features, and none of it is optional, right? It's all standard content. When you're talking forward collision alert and the side blind zone alert and the bicycle stuff, all that stuff is coming standard in our vehicles now, which I think is great. So it's a standardization, which is, maybe that saves a little bit of money and less customization. But on the fleet side, I think we need to be a little bit more flexible in that space, just because you have lots of different use cases there too. But I do like the standardization in terms of the technology and the safety features that we're now making standard, basically on a majority of our vehicles, even the lower trim level stuff and the smaller SUVs all the way up to the bigger trucks.
Well, everybody's gone through the process of standardizing the non-C-touch feel. The structural parts of vehicles.
Sure.
But now we're starting to move into areas, just like you said, with safety. Safety used to be optional, and now we're putting it standard, which makes sense, but it's running up the cost.
Yeah, well, especially in the fleet space, though. I mean, one accident, one fatality, one thing like that, and that's where I think you're seeing too. We've got in-dash cameras, and and lots of people say that's it's a little invasive, but that saves one life. That's just so powerful, right? And so all that stuff, I think, is super important, especially in the fleet space when the fleet manager's job really, they're managing the assets, but they just want to make sure everybody's getting home safe every day.
Yeah, that's important.
Driver behavior analytics, telematics with that too.
Exactly.
One little key thing too, just to add to that, that for fleets that need to be aware of when we're adding a lot of these safety items to these vehicles, the downstream that I think some fleets are just starting to come aware of with 360-degree cameras. I'm just going to use that as an example, how that impacts upfitting that some people don't understand, especially when you're going out of stock. If you go buy, let's say, a 3/4 ton pickup that has a 360-degree camera system on it, or even a 1 ton, and you go want to put a service body on that, for example, there are some serious limitations that you can do from programming perspective because that aftermarket body doesn't have the other half of the scanning capability for the 360. So you're going to get all kinds of alerts and things. There's a whole technology progression and learning curve that has to come with that too. So it's just something that I wanted to touch on that.
No, that's true, Joy. And it really brings up the point that in my mind, the way you overcome this is you begin to integrate more the use case of the cab chassis. So the engineering and the management development of the vehicles should take that into account. So you come up with a system that allows you to bring those features into the upfits. The upfit it's now part of the production. So I can't believe it. We're just getting through the discussions that we want to go through, and we're kind of coming to the end. So, Joe, maybe just take about 2 minutes, and can you capsulize the strategy Holman is taking this year? What changes and what direction are you taking at this point in time that you didn't last year? What new strategies to contend with these challenges?
Well, besides everything we've pretty much partially covered with this, it's really a lot of continuing to help navigate with the client. Basically, our strategy is to align with their strategy and the end user strategy. There's really it's just like upfitting. There's really no one size fits all perfect answer to it. Everything from trying to help, especially if it's a new fleet manager or a new client coming on board, how to get up to speed to understand all the impacts and changes with vehicle models and, technical advances, it really changes it from emissions perspectives, everything from that piece of it to what kind of alternate fuels or EV hybrids are available. It's really our strategy is really to align with them and try to provide the most efficient and economical vehicle we can while meeting all of their application requirements. I guess if that had to sum it up.
Perfect. Come back to the customer. Kirk, about your perspective, what's your quick recap of the strategy you're taking this year?
Well, I think, Jim, it really hasn't changed much. We've been pretty involved for the last 8 years in engaging companies who are bringing new technologies to the market and finding ways to model the financing associated with those new technologies. And we've done it, and we'll continue to do it. I think the best thing that we can do right now is to keep our thumb as a lender, to keep our thumb on the market, understand what's going on and what is coming to market, and then make sure that we have a solution for financing that technology.
No, yeah, technology it's interesting that all companies are looking at technology to offset costs, become more efficient, and technology. This is like the 1920s. The boom that we're having in new technologies is incredible.
Yeah.
Gabe, from General Motors' perspective, how do you summarize the strategies that you're using to offset some of these challenges this year?
Yeah, I think I would say consistency, dependability, and communication. I think is really key in this space because Listen, we're in manufacturing, we're in logistics, we're in all that stuff, and none of that stuff goes absolutely perfect, right? The important thing is being there to support our customers. I think support for our dealer network is huge. We're going to continue to do that, continuing to invest in our business elite network to help support commercial customers. The continued growth with BrightDrop. We'll see how the hybrid stuff is and meeting the customers where they need to be. And we touched on it just a minute ago, but support for the upfitters. You made a great point, Jim. When we build a chassis, to the average Joe, when they see a box truck coming down the street, they think GM made that whole thing, right? They don't know that someone else put that box on there, right? And so when we have products and we come to market, I think it's super important that we've got our upfitters tied in as soon as possible so they know how to upfit. And I went through this with the medium duty product. The Ford and the Ram kind of have a similar back end to their medium duty chassis. Ours was different with a straight frame rail. So it took some time and a lot of coordination with the upfitters to say, hey, I know this is different from what you're used to. I think it's not such a bad thing. It's just different. And, how do we grow our business together? So support for our partners, I guess, in summation, Jim, in turbulent times, I think you need to be able to depend on your partners and be able to communicate, even when you've got bad news, right? But getting in front of things as partners is always better than scrambling and not communicating.
Well, that's great. That's well put. And, I have to say, we had the same experience with our frame rails. There's always taken some time, but we're beginning to see globally products come together from Asia as well as here. Anyway, I hate to say this, we're running out of time. I'm just now engaged in this conversation. I wish it wouldn't end. And I think that it's interesting at this point. We're talking about the challenges and the uncertainty and the tariffs and the market not growing and affordability, all these issues. But you got over 300 years of experience in these three companies. And what you hear is that they're not talking about some new revolution, new way of doing things that's unheard of and unused. It's going back and doing the things you do best every day to take care of the customers, to focus on your business at hand. And if you it's kind of like the Russian dolls. If you put that box into the size of the next one at this time and work on earning the trust of your customers right now, but using technology with no trade-offs to achieve that. And that's what you heard from all three of our panelists. And I think it's been a great message. Thank you so much for sharing and being so generous with your time and your information. And also thank you, Catherine and Work Truck Solutions, because there again, you come back to using technology in all of our business. And Work Truck Solutions is the fountain of youth when it comes to information, managing commercial vehicle operations, both from an OEM, from the dealers, from the upfitters, and from the users. So we thank you for this opportunity, and we look forward to the rest of the summit. Appreciate your time, and have a great day. It's been wonderful. And thank you all.